Welcome, everybody, to this week's live stream. Um, I want to say hello to Stephanie Beckman's here, Blaine Doris is here, Lisa Aria, Bess, and also Sydney Kawa. Welcome to this live stream, our weekly live stream. Um, while we let more people get in, actually, we have about 17 people in here already. But once we get, why don't you guys give us a shout out where you're coming from? Hey, jet lag 737 from Seattle. Great, welcome. It's always good to see all of y'all. Actually, and Liston, Henry Liston, and Jim's Home Comforts. How's it going? Uh, Basically today, before we end, my beautiful wife, Yamilet, how are you doing? And Lobo Solo, you're here. Good evening. Actually, Lobo Solo has credit for. I'm going to give him credit for my last video. He actually was the inspiration behind my last video, and. Indiana, Lisa's coming from Indiana, and Jim's coming from Toronto. Um, what I'm going to do today is discuss my last video, like I always said, from Querétaro, JD Birch. How's it going? Um, Before we get started, I want to make a big announcement. I'm going to actually do a video about it because I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea. But I did open up the merchandise shop like I promised. Some of my viewers, they wanted to be able to purchase T-shirts or stuff with that. So we picked out a couple of items that we thought maybe the audience would like. And if you want something else added, just let me know. But it is available on the store section of my YouTube channel. Like I said, this is for you guys. One of the things I want to mention is I pretty much put the prices at cost. I only marked them up $1 or $2. I had to mark them up something because apparently you have to put a price, your asking price. I didn't put the suggested price. I put $1, $2, so I'm not making any money off of this. If I sell 10 shirts, it's $10. It's enough to buy me some coffee or whatever. I just marked it up because I had to mark it up in the store or whatever. But the store is open. I will be doing an official unveiling of the store or opening up of the store a little later on. Another thing to note, next week I'm not going to have my live stream because next weekend I head back to Monterrey and I have to get ready and pack and all of that stuff and head back to Monterrey. So next week, hopefully when I settle down in Monterrey, I'll try to make up that stream. I'm still working on the video of the people that lost their van that I talked about last week. Lobo Solo came up with, he had come up with a comment, and thank you very much, Lobo Solo, about what's this talk about them wanting to deport Americans. I hadn't heard anything about it, so I decided I'm going to look into that. That sounds very interesting, because maybe you know something that I don't know, or where did you get the information from? Um, so basically, I'm going to explain my last week's video, this last week's video, why I did it. It turned out that I got a lot of comments on it. I haven't responded to any of the comments because I got everything from, every country has a right um, to control their borders. There's a bunch of millions of people that live here illegally. And Mexico doesn't care, to all sorts of different things. But that's why I kind of kept it quiet and I didn't answer to any of your comments. But uh, basically, I want to go over tonight what's going on and dispel the myth about deportation of Americans. But at the same time, I want to tell you what the truth is when it comes to deportations of Americans. Here's what's going on. Apparently, when I did a Google search, there was nothing in the news. And Lobo Solo. Actually, this is where I'm going to get to. I had seen it several times on TikTok, and I know you will not mislead people. Um, and basically, um, what happened was that there was a bunch of TikTok videos. When I did a Google search, all it was TikTok videos about supposedly the president making some comments. As I said in my video, first of all, hey, Dominique, Aaron, Nerd, thanks for joining us. Um, And basically, what happened was when I looked up these TikTok videos, I noticed something very strange. All of them basically said the same thing. Some people reworded them. I picked two at random that were one was reworded, but if you look at it and you examine the two videos, it's basically the exact same thing, almost word for word. All they did was changed it a little bit. And then I saw another TikTok video with even the same voices. So what this got me to kind of concerned because why is it only on TikTok? I didn't see it on. Now, I did make it to Instagram, but this was after I did my video. There was some reels that did come out on Instagram, but when I was researching it, it was only on TikTok. And basically, it was saying the same thing that the Mexican president had made comments that he's going to start deporting people that are here illegally. Um, and here's the thing with all of that stuff. If you're here illegally, Mexico a long time ago actually started cracking down on illegal people that were here illegally, or in the Mexican term is irregular. If you either have a regular status or irregular status, so we claim, not we claim, we refer to it as illegally, but uh, immigration refers to it as irregular. That's why they have the regularization program. The regularization program is to change you from irregular to regular. And that's where this regularization comes in, is the process of taking a person that's irregular and making them regular, which is legal, and making them a resident. So what I did was I looked on the news, nothing on the news. And then I looked at all these TikTok videos. What it seems to be is a disinformation campaign. None of the TikTok videos, none of the reels, nothing that I've seen in any of these videos even shows the president saying this. Because if he would have said it publicly, there would have been a filming of it and somebody would have put it out there, like him actually saying it. And so this is what it appears to be. There's been a lot of incidents, and also there was some mention of some incidents of that when they were talking about gentrification and them coming to take over stuff, they some of the TikTok videos had some of the incidents. There was an incident in Mazatlan with the bandas. There was an incident in Puerto Vallarta where an American couple moved in next to a bar and restaurant, and they didn't like the music, so they were suing the bar and restaurant. There was major protest over that. I showed you the one in San Miguel de Allende. And then there was another incident where a tour guide that was bringing a group for the eclipse had rented the corner of a little area and yet ended up berating a little girl and yelling at a reporter and telling the reporter off. So I think this is in backlash. I don't know if it's coming from Mexico. It could be coming fake news. That's all I can say. I don't know where it's coming from. But the truth is, it also doesn't make sense because basically, if the president said, I'm going to start deporting people that are here illegally, well, they're already doing that. Okay. The Mexican government is already doing that. Now, there's a lot of South Americans coming through here, Central Americans, but a lot of those people, they're not deporting them, but what they're doing is giving them resident status or some type of status to stay here for humanitarian reasons. So even though they enter illegally, they are given some type of concession. So if you think about it, it's just like the US president saying, or the Canadian president saying, we're going to start deporting people here that are here illegally when we already have a system to do that. I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? So, and all of these incidents that happen are all incidents that happen with people or residents that basically are here legally. They were a tourist in the case of the people that were here for the eclipse. So this didn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. But I am going to go over what makes sense tonight. And this is why I want to make sense of this, because there's a big misconception, because a lot of the comments I got one comment saying, I live in a little community in Mexico and there 3/4 of the Americans here are illegal, are without papers, and the people in the community don't care. And it's probably true because it's a small community and probably immigration doesn't have an office there. So these people continue to live there illegally, um, or irregular. Let's make this term, we need to remember this, that immigration calls them irregular, not illegal. And that's another thing that I noticed in the video. They were saying illegally here. It's irregular. So basically, that's one person's comment. Another person's comment was there's a million Americans living here illegally in Mexico or irregularly here in Mexico. And I want to dispel some of those myths. First of all, immigration set up a program for all of those people that were here irregularly. They gave them a chance to to become regular. They gave them a chance to become residents, 4-year residency, and then automatically you get after 4 years you renew into permanent residency. So why somebody would stay here without papers is beyond me, especially if you've been here for 10 years and you have proof that you've been here for 10 years, you qualify for the regularization program. There's no excuse not to be regular. Okay. And that's what the stance that Mexico is taking right now. Um, and those people that live in that small village, they probably don't leave the village. Immigration doesn't go into the village and check. So probably it's true. But I want to stress to everybody, this is that little villages or that's that little town's experience. That person that's saying, oh, everybody in my town is illegal or doesn't have papers and nobody cares and Mexico doesn't care. You have to be very careful. It's exactly what happened to these people with the van. They were told not to go a certain route, and they were either going to risk their van being taken away or go through a dangerous route. But they should have gotten a tip to begin with. And they were under the understanding, I'm going to Quintana Roo, so I don't need a tip. But in order to get to Quintana Roo, you need a tip. And then in order to get to Baja from Quintana Roo, or they went to Baja, they don't need a tip in Baja, but they need a tip to get to Baja because they're going to go through a zone that you need a tip. So they were malinformed or misinformed. And this is what has been happening in any of I haven't seen any reports lately, but at one point, immigration does have checkpoints. They do check and revise buses. This happens a lot on buses. They do revisions on buses a lot. They check buses. And in the old days, 10 years ago, you used to get on and you used to just say, U.S. citizen. Oh, okay, I don't need to check your papers. You're fine. And then you would speak English and you didn't know how to speak Spanish and they didn't want to mess with you and they would let you go. And in some cases, immigration would even know that there was some person there that was illegal, but they didn't want to go through the process of sending them back. But what has happened now is with the revision of the immigration system, they're cracking down on all of this stuff. So if an immigration agent boards your bus, if you're going to be traveling, two things that I always say: don't travel without being regular, because if you are found that your FMM is expired, you will be detained and you will be taken to a center for deportation. And you could be detained from anywhere from a couple of days to a couple of months until they can get you back to your country. They even had, at one point in Cancun, they had detention centers set up to send people back. Um, but that does happen. It's not a myth. It happens. If immigration boards your bus and you don't have and here's the other thing too, if you don't have your resident card with you or you don't have your passport with you, let's say you leave your passport in the safe and you're going to go on the bus to make a trip to Tulum from Cancun, but you don't want to take your passport because God forbid you lose it. And if immigration stops that bus that you're on, even it could be a tour bus, not just regular buses, but they stop tour buses. I see it all the time. I go to the border all the time. I travel to McAllen when I'm in Monterrey, and every single immigration checkpoint that I see, they have a bus pulled over. Most of the time, they don't check cars, but most of the time, I see them. They're checking the bus. Um, and if you don't have that passport and you don't have that resident card, guess what? Even if you are a resident, even if you are legally in the country, they're going to detain you until they can figure out. And detention can mean 5 minutes, 1 hour, 7 hours, 1 day. And actually, a lot of facilitators say, hey, don't carry your resident card around town if you're going to be in town, like in here in San Miguel. There's one facilitator that says that because getting a new resident card is a really pain. But that's because if immigration stops you in town, and they do have done random immigration checks here in San Miguel, but that was a while back. You have somewhere that you can call somebody and have somebody go to your house and pick up your papers, and you're there locally, and you can tell them your address, and you can pretty much talk to them, and or they can even take you back to your house so you can go get your residency card. And that's not a problem. But when you're traveling and you're 1,000 miles, 100 miles away from home, 100 miles away from your hotel room, then it's not that easy. And if they need to detain you for a couple of days to check up on the computers, depending on what kind of computer systems they have or whatever they have access to, they will detain you. That is a fact. That's not a myth. That's not disinformation. Um, and you will be stopped if you are traveling. More than likely, you're going to pass through a checkpoint. When I've gone on the bus, immigration always gets on the bus, boards the bus, and asks everybody for their documentation. So you want to be carrying that at all times with you. The other thing that a lot of people don't tell you about the regularization program is that this is a program that's been very, very highly promoted because you don't need to meet financial solvency, which is great. And I applaud immigration for doing this because the financial solvency requirements, are very high right now, upwards of $4,000 with exchange rates and the fact that they won't change from the minimum wage. So the regularization program, if you've been here before 2023, which means you have an entry in 2022 or later, and you can show it in a passport stamp, or they have a record of your entry, because in 2018 or 19, they started doing entries on the computer. So you might have an entry on the computer. You can actually try to get regular from irregular. You have to pay a fine. It's about $1,000 by the time you finish with everything and get a facilitator and everything else. And you have to pay for your residency or for your residency, and you get your residency. This is a great program, but everybody needs to understand that one of the requirements of the program, and there's different requirements. Some require a 180-day FMM expired. There's a lot of different. First, two things. First, even though this is a great program, not everybody qualifies. I know a lot of people that haven't made entry before 2023. Also, and also some offices have given grace to say 2024. Some offices have kept it at 2022, but most of it, rule of thumb is 2023. So if you are going to let your FMM expire, the day your FMM expires, even though you're going to go to the immigration office 3 days later or 4 days later or a week later, you are irregular here in the country. If you get stopped by INM, you do face deportation because you're irregular here in the country. Now, what most facilitators will tell you to do is if you're in San Miguel and you let your FMM expire, don't leave San Miguel. Just stay here in San Miguel until we can get you to immigration. It sounds counterintuitive that I'm telling you, you're breaking the law, but you're breaking the law in order to meet another law. It's kind of an ironic thing right now, but it does exist. But you can't just say, "Hey, I'm going to immigration in 3 days. I just let my FMM expire because." No, immigration doesn't care. You're here irregularly. So, if what I'm advising you against doing is if you're here to let your FMM expire, let's say you're in Mexico City and you want to do your process in San Miguel de Allende, get to San Miguel de Allende before your FMM expires. Don't let it expire and then take the bus and then get stuck at a bus checkpoint with an expired FMM. And then the other thing that I always see on Facebook posts is, don't worry, if your FMM expires, not a problem. You just pay a fine on the airport on your way out, which is true. You pay a fine and you say, sorry, I overstayed my FFM. But the problem is, if you get stopped while your FMM is expired, you do face deportation. Now, maybe the immigration officer will give you a break. I'm not saying that they won't. This is what happened to the couple with their van. Somebody told them, we got a break. We got stopped at a checkpoint. They just sent us back and said, go get a tip. This couple didn't get a break. They didn't get a break. And the thing that I try to stress with all my viewers is, this couple lost their van. They almost didn't get home. They lost their livelihood. And then some people, when we talk about border runs, going to the border about 180 days, there's people that weren't prepared. Then they have their whole life in Mexico, their whole life, their furniture, their personal goods, everything. And all of a sudden they go for a border run and an immigration officer decides to say, no, no entry. You've been here too many times. You've repeated too many times. And they don't have a plan B. They don't have a way to get their stuff back. They don't have a way to get back into Mexico to go close their lease, whatever it might be. That's why I talk about the rules. If you knew the rules, if that's the thing you want to do, our border runs is legal. Well, technically not. They're illegal until you literally they're legal in a sense that the immigration officer gives you that the authorization. If the immigration officer gives you authorization, you're totally in the country legally. You got 180 days. But if that officer only gives you 7 days, you got 7 days. If that officer doesn't let you in, he doesn't let you in. That's the way it works. And I'm tired of YouTubers trying to say, don't worry, you'll get 180 days. Don't worry, no problem. And like I said, I've seen disasters like the van happen. There was a guy that I repeated it 20 million times. A guy on the that went for a border run in Belize. They wouldn't let him back in, and it was during the time of COVID. He couldn't even go back to his own home country. He lost his whole livelihood. And yes, that's one in maybe a million, but you don't want to be the one in a million. That's what I always try to tell people. And also know your consequences. I know one person that has told me they go to the border every 180 days, they've never been refused. And I said, well, that's good for you, but have a plan B. Oh no, not a problem. I don't leave anything back home. If they don't let me in, I'll just go back to my home country, and I don't have a problem because I already have a home back there. Okay, that's great. They have a plan B. I'm not trying to tell you to not to do it or not do it. I'm just telling you to know the consequences. And being misinformed by YouTubers, by people on Facebook, I do it all the time. I run to the border every 180 days for the last 17 years, and no one's ever questioned me. I've lived here for the last 16 years without an FMM on an expired FMM. Nobody's ever done anything to me. People tend to generalize that it's not going to happen to me because it didn't happen to him, and that's not what the case is. So, also, Lisa, you ask a good question. Can you have a picture on your phone of your residency card? Here's the thing, Lisa. Some immigration officers don't mind. Okay. I know that what people do is they have a copy of their residency card when they're locally here. When you travel, take your original documents. Here's the thing with the residency card. The new residency cards that are now on, and also even the older ones, have some security features. And actually, the immigration officers can actually look on their phone and put your card under the phone to see if it's a valid card or not. Instead of having to call in or run your number, they can actually look at your card, and there's certain security features that I guess your phone camera can see. And they have, I don't know if it's an application or what. The last 2 or 3 times that I've been checked, because I have been checked at the Cancun airport, flying domestically by immigration, they've actually took me aside and said, let me see your documentation. Pulled out my resident card, and they actually put it up to a phone with a camera, and I don't know what they did with it because I couldn't see. And then they said, okay, you're good. So you want your original documents anytime that you're traveling. I carry my original documents with me everywhere. I mean, even if I go to the mercado, Um, I got a wallet with an Apple AirTag on it, um, and I always see it as the same as replacing my driver's license. If I lose my driver's license or somebody bugs me, then I'm gonna just replace my resident card. Now I'm going to be traveling overseas pretty soon, and I'm going to need my resident card to check out of Mexico because I'm flying out of Mexico. We're going on a special trip. I'm not telling anybody because I'm hoping to come surprise live from there. But I need my residency card. In that case, I'll probably lock my residency card back in the hotel in the safe. I don't need it because I'm in another country, but I'm going to need it to get back into Mexico, and I don't want to lose it. Of course, I'm going to put it in the safe. But um, nowadays, they print out your residency card the same day. I know I'd probably have to pay a facilitator like Sonia Diaz or someone to get my residency card back, and it's going to be a hassle. It's the same as replacing all your credit cards, the same as calling all your banks. If you get robbed or you get mugged, you're going to have some type of inconvenience, regardless. I even have my U.S. passport card. I would have to replace that, but I just err on the side of caution. Um, and there are certain areas, if I go to Mexico, then I'm, of course, not going to carry my residency card. I'll have it back in the hotel and in the safe. And then if for whatever reason I get stopped and they tell me, hey, well, let's go back to my hotel. I can prove my residency, or I can send my wife. My wife's a Mexican citizen, so all she has to do is show her INA and say, "Hey, I'm a Mexican citizen," and then my wife can go back to the hotel. Where do I meet you at? And she can go to the immigration office and say, "Release my husband because here's his resident card." See that when people tell you not to carry your resident card with you, remember you have to have a plan B. The plan B is my wife can go grab my residency card. So, and there is issues, Lisa, here in Mexico that when you make copies, because some people make a copy and then they get it notarized by a notario. Um, if you make a copy of a government document and it's not notarized, it's technically illegal. Nowadays, with smartphones, and we take pictures with smartphones, uh, can an immigration officer be kind of a jerk and say you made an illegal copy? Yes, it can. Um, have I heard of that happening? Not really. Um, and I think if you're pretty reasonable with the immigration officer, and I know in a lot of cases people get stopped, and uh, um, it's not, it's not what you would call it. Not that it's not enforced, but they just say, you know what? Okay, we've questioned you enough. We believe you that it's back at the hotel room. Okay, so it's use your discretion, and also, um, Dominique has a question here, and I pretty much finished with the deportation. You have any other questions about it? About your documents, carrying your documents, about deportation and filing? I'm gonna move into questions. Actually, Dominique has a question here. My children were born in the USA, both parents U.S. citizens, but their father-in-law was born in Monterrey. Okay. My children were told they could get Mexican because their father-in-law. Is that true? Um, they don't have blood. You said their father-in-law. That's not a blood. You have to, in order to get Mexican citizenship. Like I have a mother-in-law and a father-in-law that are Mexican citizens. Okay, I can't get my Mexican citizenship through my father-in-law or my mother-in-law, and actually, I can't get Mexican citizenship through my wife neither. Now, the advantage of being married to a Mexican, though, is that I don't have to wait to 5 years. I can actually apply for citizenship up front, but the requirements are the same. I have to take a test, and then I have to take the language test, the history and cultural test, and language test. I'm waiting till I'm 60 years old, which is going to come in about a year. Next year, I'll probably apply for my Mexican citizenship, but that's because I won't have to take the history and cultural exam, which is supposedly very, very hard. But Dominic, unless they have blood. relationship to their, because you're saying father-in-law, you can't get citizenship through it's citizenship by birth and citizenship by naturalization. I have a father-in-law and a mother-in-law, and I can't get citizenship through them, um, that are Mexican citizens, and my wife's Mexican citizen also. I can't get that through them. I have to naturalize. I can't derive it by birth. For example, my nieces, my nieces on my wife's side, they were born in the United States, but their father and their mother are both Mexican citizens, so they were able to claim their citizenship through birth, and that's what they call citizenship, derived citizenship through birth. Um, I hope that answers your question, Dominic. Um, any other questions? Oh, a nerd had some comments. I read in the news back April 13th, the pollution was so bad, all school was canceled, as well as all in Monterey. Yeah, actually, it's gotten pretty bad, nerd. Um, it has gotten pretty bad. So, um, the pollution index is really bad up there. And 100% of buses at the border are stopped at a permanent immigration checkpoint. Yeah, actually, some of them are not actually at the border. For example, we traveled to McAllen, Texas, and we entered through a place called Reynosa. And Tom M., welcome. Sorry I'm turning in late. I don't know what happened to you, but I'm going to carry my copies. The local police or wherever don't know what they're looking for. Keep it secure. Yeah, Tom. I mean, if you're locally there, this is the thing. If you're locally there, if you're locally in the area where you live, I mean, like I said, I mean, here's the thing. Actually, and I know I would probably do it even when I was working, is if someone says, "Hey, I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm not a Mexican. I'm not illegal here." Well, first of all, hey, I'm going to look at your 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 language capabilities, and then I'm going to say, "Okay, well, where do you live?" "Oh, I live here. This is my address." "Okay, well, are you willing to go back with me to your address to go check your documents?" "Not a problem. Come on, let's go." Well, how many immigration agents are going to? Then they got other people to check. They're going to probably say, "Well, we believe you." Okay, that's happened a lot. But at the same time, always be ready. And if they say, "Let's go back to your house," not a problem. Go back to your house. Um, the other thing that's important to note, I think Tom, you brought this up, and I'm going to bring I forgot to bring your comment up. I'm sorry about that, Tom. Uh, the local police don't know that what they're looking for. Here's the thing that you need to understand, Tom. Local police, not that you need to understand, that everybody needs to understand. When I talk about checkpoints and checking your immigration documents, local police, there's a constitutional amendment. There's a section of the Constitution, the Mexican Constitution, to your right to free travel, and it applies to everybody that's here in Mexico. And so the local police can kind of detain you for something that you might have done wrong, like speeding, whatever it might be. But they have to have a reason, because they technically, by the Constitution, can't detain you or stop you from traveling. The other thing they can't do is check your immigration papers, because in that amendment of free travel, saying the police can't stop you, kind of, sort of. In that amendment, it says the exception is for immigration purposes only. But the only person that can check your immigration papers is not a local cop, is not a state cop. Now the Guardia Nacional can check your papers, and an immigration officer. So the local police, if they wanted to start asking for your immigration documents, well, you're not really obliged to show them. I don't know how much of an attitude adjustment they'll want to give you, but like I said, the only people that you're going to need your residency card for is um, the actual immigration or Guardia Nacional. And usually, Guardia Nacional will be with immigration officials when they actually check your papers. So, more than likely, it's just immigration that you have to worry about with carrying your documents. And Tom, if you're traveling, take them with you. It's just a risk you take, but it's one, you leave them locked up at your house. And like I said, you want to get on the bus, you want to go to Mexico City, take them with you. It's the one time you have to take it out, maybe once a year, twice a year, three times a year. Uh, it's going to save you a lot of hassle because just copies, if you get stopped at a checkpoint, and I'm going to tell you right now, let's say they have to check to see if those copies are real and they have to call and I don't know, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon and the immigration main office is closed, then you may have to spend the night in a detention facility. And that has happened. That is a true fact. It's happened. Um, as far as keeping it secure, keep it as secure as you want to keep it. Like I said, I figure I mean, I'm not going to get kicked out of the country if I don't have it. Um, I might have to pay a good, nice little amount of fee uh, to get it done. But um, and oh, thank you for the dislike. The dislike helps me get what people need to understand is if you don't like the job I'm doing, give me a dislike. It helps in any interaction with YouTube helps the algorithm. Anytime someone does an interaction, whether it's a dislike or a like, that helps me get the word out and also helps me also it helps me when I get a dislike to know that maybe I said something wrong or did something wrong and it helps me to improve. So like I said, I just got a dislike right now and thank you very much for that dislike. It helps me get the word out. I don't, like I said, I don't it doesn't change the actually it helps the YouTube algorithm get me in front of more people. The more likes I get, the more likes plus dislikes plus comments, the more it helps us get out there. Uh, but yeah, keep your documents secure, but at the same time, just realize that you do face those things. You face deportation, you face not deportation. If you're here legally, they're not going to kick you out. That's one thing to remember. And Tom, if you keep your documents secure, they're not going to kick you out. You're just going to be very inconvenienced. As a matter of fact, the reason why I carry my documents with me all the time is the inconvenience of getting kicked out, not kicked out, the inconvenience of being detained. Let me tell you, I've been in some of these detention centers. Even being detained for 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours is miserable and horrible. I'm talking about places without, I mean, the sanitary conditions are bad. I don't want to be detained. I would rather go get a replacement card. I'd rather go through the trouble of getting a replacement card than get detained in one of these facilities. I'm telling you right now, I've taken personal tours of some of the immigration detention facilities. They're places that you never want to wish your worst enemy to go to. I've been there. I can tell you. I can tell you. I mean, even thinking about it, the smell. I mean, it brings back memories. To be honest with you. So, like I said, just practice common sense. This is common sense. If you're on the beach, you're in Cancun, and you're 50 feet away from your hotel room, well, sure, you don't want to take your passport out and while you're in the middle of the water, that doesn't make sense. And trust me, if you say my hotel's right there, I'm almost sure they'll give you a chance to take you to your hotel room and check your papers. Um, so, like I said, really the big thing is you just don't want to get caught far away from home. And actually, there was a girl in Merida that got detained, and then she didn't have any friends she could call, and they were like, "Well, have a friend bring your documents over." And she actually got detained for 2 days, literally because she couldn't find anybody to go over to her house to go inside to get her papers, and they wouldn't let her go, and they wouldn't go with her. So you got to remember the immigration officer is doing you a favor if they go with you or they let you go. It's not your right just because you have a copy. It's not your right to say I'm here illegally. Well, it's their right to say, you know what, we got to make sure, but they're not going to kick you out. You're not going to get deported. And I'm going to tell you this right now. If you don't have your residency card with you and you're a permanent resident and you haven't done anything to lose your residency, like you didn't come in as a tourist, then they're not going to kick you out. You're legally here, whether you have your card with you or not. It's just a matter you have to prove it. That's the bottom line. Happy Sunday, nature lover. And hey, Michael Guerrito, how's it going? Yeah, the one thing I can say, I feel so lucky, especially since I have Mexican citizenship, makes me appreciate more my parents' home country. Yeah, Michael, I agree. And I'm going to get my Mexican citizenship. Uh, no, Tom, I never, you know what? I believe you that you're honest. And actually, uh, yes, you only have to show it to INM. And of course, traveling my bus, airplane within Mexico, use every original passports, residency cards. Yes, Tom. And don't get me wrong, Tom. I wasn't trying to tell you that you were being dishonest. Actually, Tom, let me bring this back up because I know Tom said I'm carrying my copies with me. I think what Tom meant, and I don't know if this is right. If you want to correct me, Tom, if I'm wrong, what you meant is I'm going to have copies with me all the time on my phone or on me in my wallet, so that if I do get stopped locally where he lives, that he can say, here's a copy. You know what? I'm here legally. And even the cops, they can be very confusing and they can say, let me see your papers, even though you don't have to show it to them. Then you can show them a copy and say, look, sir, here's my copy. And um, I think that's what you meant, Tom, was just having a copy with you all the time. And I do have copies on my phone in case, let's say I walked out without my wallet. I've had that happen to me. I've literally gone to pay and I'm like, oh, shoot, I don't have my wallet with me. Um, and I, I have my residency card in there. I have copies. What you're doing is a great idea. And like you said, when you travel, just make sure you don't but the thing, Tom, that I like to stress, and I don't, when I kind of say, oh, you need to do this, you need to, I'm not talking directly to you, Tom. It's really the community, because there's a lot of misconceptions that if I have a copy and it's notarized and it's legal, immigration has to accept it. They don't have to accept it. They only accept original documents. If they want to accept that copy, that's up to them. If they want to let you off and believe you that you have your stuff in your hotel room and they don't want to follow you to your hotel room, that's up to them. If they want to take you back to the office in Cancun and make somebody else go get it from your hotel room, or have the office staff go, I don't know, into your hotel and open up the safe and I don't know, whatever they want to do. But if they want proof, that's their right by Mexican law. I'm not saying that that's what they're going to do. Um, I am 71, have permanent residence. My grandmother and aunts and uncles were born in Mexico. My father in USA. Can I apply for citizenship? JD, what you're going to need to do, I don't know if your father, um, your grandmother, I believe you can actually, as a descendant, you can naturalize, but what you're going to need to do to get Mexican citizenship by birth is your father can fix his Mexican citizenship because of it. Even though he was born in the USA, your father can fix his Mexican and he'll get citizenship by birth. Uh, and you can do that in the U.S. He can do that in the U.S. at a Mexican consulate. All he needs is his birth certificate, the mother and the father's birth certificates, your grandmother's and your grandfather's birth certificate. There's ways of getting it here in Mexico, and then he can get his Mexican citizenship and claim it because he's got a right to it because he was born from Mexican parents. One of your parents has to be Mexican. It doesn't have to be both. Whether they were both Mexican, your grandmother or your grandfather were Mexican. If your grandfather was a U.S. citizen, your grandmother was a. It doesn't matter. Your grandmother was a Mexican citizen, uh, and she was born in Mexico. Your father can get it, and then guess what? Once your father gets Mexican citizenship, you're a direct descendant of your father, who's a citizen by birth, so that you can get your Mexican citizenship. So it's doable, JD. It is doable, but you can't in order, but you can apply as a descendant, like your grandmother or your grandfather, but you have to go through the naturalization process, if I'm not mistaken. So, the best way to do it, and this is what I always tell everybody, and actually get your father to do it because I mean, there's advantages of. Here's the thing: I've done videos before about the disadvantages of it, uh, but really the disadvantage is you lose your consulate privileges. And the more, even though I was with the State Department and I dealt with consulate privileges, if you're going to come here, uh, more and more people, and I'm doing it because of pride reasons, um, and also I'm going to be naturalized, so I can't leave the country for 5 years. But getting it by birth is probably your best bet. You don't have to go through any financial solvency. You don't have to worry about getting your residency. You don't need to worry about renewing it. And it can all be done in the U.S. JD, if you're not in Mexico right now, if you're in the U.S., it can all be done in a Mexican consulate. As a matter of fact, my wife and I, in the next couple of weeks, are going to go up and pick up her Mexican passport at a Mexican consulate in the U.S. Because it's a little bit more of a wait here in Mexico. So a lot of that stuff can be done in the U.S. You don't have to come to Mexico to do it. Now you might have to come to Mexico to get the birth certificates and stuff because if your grandmother's deceased, then you may need. And but if your father still has your grandmother's birth certificate somewhere saved away, then that'll be even better. But what you want to do also, JD, is check with your Mexican consulate. What documents do they want? Some will require the birth certificate, your birth certificate. Sometimes the names have to match. You just need to make sure you have everything in order. Noble Solo, Sir Dragon X, Mr. Ernie, thank you for telling the truth. People need to keep their documents. They stopped bus coming back from Oaxaca to Veracruz. They entered the bus but did not ask, just walked by. Yeah, sometimes they walk by, and sometimes what. Here's the thing with immigration that everybody needs to understand. Every once in a while, they get into a uh, uh, I don't know how to say it. They get into this mode of we're going to check everybody. Uh, a couple of years ago, they got into this mode of we're not giving everybody 180 days. We're only giving them 7 days. They get into a mode of doing random checks every once in a while. And those are the things you need to be worried about. And Lobo, you had a good experience where they just walked by. Um, and I mean, you speak Spanish pretty well and everything else, and said hello, and they probably even assumed that you were a Mexican citizen. But that's not going to happen in every case. Sometimes they're going to check everybody. My wife, a lot of times, they walk by us when we've been on the bus. That was probably previous before they started getting all weary about things. And here's another thing that we need to really understand is that regardless of who gets elected president in the United States, both are running on a, how would you say, get tough on immigration stance. Both are running on, let's give everybody that's illegally that comes in the United States, kind of, sort of, not really. There's a different stance, but both candidates are running a, let's give these people back to Mexico. Texas right now has ticked off the U.S. government by saying we're going to start deporting people by state law. And Mexico has said we're not going to accept them. All of these political things that could happen in the next presidential administration, and then we don't know what kind of attitude the new president is going to have, the new administration is going to have towards. So if there's anti-American sentiment, there might start boarding buses and start, or they might start entering towns and start saying, you know what, we know there's a bunch of Americans in this town, the little town that nobody ever checked for 20 years. You don't know. That's why I try to tell people, look, if you've been here for the last 10 years and you have an expired FMM, if you can find it, go get regularized. Even if you have to borrow $1,000 from somebody, go do it, because then you don't ever have to worry. I mean, you got 4 years and then you just convert over permanent residency. Actually, those are who are doing border runs. If you've been doing border runs for the last, if you've been doing border runs before 2023, go get your residency. Um, Actually, you're going to spend more money doing a border run. Even if you do a border run and you only spend $100, if you do this for 10 years, that's $1,000. You can get your residency now. Fix it. That's the easiest solution. So, nature lover, I've been trying to find my FMM from 2020 with no luck so far. Does the Mexican government keep copies? I vaguely remember having to return it on the plane home. Nature lover, here's the thing. In 2020, I don't know which airport you went through. There might be a record in the immigration systems, but that they're gonna have to check. Also, um, do you have a stamp? Because they also stamp your passport. And even if you, because a lot of times they cancel your passport if you got it renewed since then. If you have your old passport with the stamp in it, that proves you entered Mexico on that date. So not necessarily your FMM nature lover. You can actually use the passport stamp that they stamped when you came in 2020. Um, I don't know. I have this bad habit of whenever I get a new passport and they cut my passport, they usually send you back your old passport. The reason why the State Department does that is because sometimes people have a visa in the old passport for whatever country, and you need to take both passport. Actually, that happened to me when I was a diplomat. I had my visa, my diplomatic visa, in my old diplomatic passport, and before I came home, my diplomatic passport expired, and then they cut my diplomatic passport and gave me a new one, but they didn't replace the visa. So anytime I had to come in and go, because I had to come and go a lot in Brazil. I had to actually have both passports with my visa in one and my. I also had a diplomatic ID, but I had my diplomatic passport. But they would check, where's your visa, your diplomatic visa, because you have different a visa in your passport. So if you have your old passport, if you got it, if you had it renewed since the last time, check your old passport to see if the stamp's there. And if the stamp's there, that's good enough. That's all you need. Thanks. Yes, Ernie. Thanks. You that's what you meant. That's what I thought you meant, Tom. And please, if someone comes up with a question, and I get very passionate about these subjects, I get very, very passionate, and sometimes I'm like, no, you can't carry this, or you're going to be deported. No, I'm not trying to personally attack the person that asked the question. I just get passionate about these are the rules. This is the way it works, and sometimes, like I said, without details, I just assumed. And then Tom explained it. And of course, uh, he clarified. But I please don't take it personally. Whether your parents or grandparents were citizens. Yeah, I think Michael, JD said that the grandmother was born in Mexico. The grandmother and all of the aunts and uncles were born in Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. If copies aren't kept, can I get a new copy with proof of my visit? It all depends. What I would do, nature lover, is talk to a facilitator. The problem that they're looking for is the actual entry stamp in your passport or your old FMM. Um, Actually, it's an entry stamp in your passport because you actually give the FMM back because you fill out the top part. It used to be when it was paper, you would fill out the top part, they would keep the top part, and then when you were going back on the plane, you would give them the bottom part. So unless you had a copy of that FMM, uh, I don't know. To be honest with you, all the INM offices are different. I don't know if you can get a copy, or I don't know if you've been in. Because here's the thing: they were still in the paper system. They went to the electronic system. 2020 was kind of a weird year. 2017, 2018, 2019 was when they were updating their immigration systems, where they were actually scanning your passport and it actually is a record of your entry. Um, I think, if I'm not mistaken, there is ways of checking. The facilitators have ways of checking if you have entries. You might have to make an account, and they might have a record. If they have a record of your entry, if they run you in the immigration computer, the only problem is at that time in 2020, certain airports didn't have it. Depending on what airport you came through, certain airports weren't fully implemented. Maybe if it got put into the main database, um, then you have a good chance that they have an actual record of it. But they are going to try as hard as they can to tell you, do you have a passport stamp? Um, so um, you could try to see if talk to a facilitator and see if that's good enough. But I think they want proof of entry and exit, because even though you have plane tickets and all of that stuff, uh, that helps you prove your case. But I don't know, to be honest with you, nature lover, I don't know how detailed they're wanting it. All I know is they're asking for a passport stamp, or if you're in the system already. Especially with these people now with their electronic FMMs, where they started doing the electronic thing, they're already in the system. There's like a digital copy of it, and I think there's a way to check. JD Birds, they've all passed away. Yes, JD. Even though they passed away, did your father pass away also? Because the problem, because you just said that uh, that that your father was born in the USA. You can get there. Yes, this is what I was going to tell you, JD. If your father's still alive, you're going to be in luck. But the problem is, if your father's passed away, you might have some issues. Um, you because if he didn't fix his citizenship, and actually this has happened to my son. His parents were from Mexico. The kids never fixed their citizenship. Both parents passed away, and there was some property that my son's aunts and uncles had. That this is my oldest son from a previous marriage, and they were trying to get their Mexican citizenship from their dad or their parents, and the it was actually their kids that were trying to get the citizenship, but the parent passed away, and they never fixed it. So they were having problems because one generation didn't fix it. So um, now, if your father fixed his citizenship, even though he was born in the USA, then you would. And as far as their birth certificates, the grandmother, if I'm not mistaken, is um, um, you actually, if you can get it from the civil registry, the birth certificate. Now I know Lisa at one time said she was having some problems because it was a little town and she couldn't get the birth certificate. But there's a way you can get it actually from uh, from public records. I don't know if I would be right or wrong, but don't you lose your diplomatic rights depending whether you stay in Mexico as a citizen. But if you have dual, but use your U.S. passport in Europe, um, here's what how it works, Michael. You lose your diplomatic rights if you're a dual citizen. Here's the easiest way to explain it. When you become a Mexican citizen, okay. For example, my wife's a dual citizen, and maybe one day I'm going to become a dual citizen if I can pass the Spanish test. Um, when I come into Mexico, okay, even though Mexico recognizes that I'm an American citizen, the difference now, you, Michael, got it through birth. So you can't lose your citizenship. I can lose my citizenship. But when you walk into Mexico, you have to do everything as a Mexican citizen. For example, we're going to travel abroad. When my wife enters Mexico, she's not going to enter as a U.S. citizen. She's got to enter as a Mexican citizen because she's a Mexican citizen. I exit as a resident, and I enter as a resident. So the reason why you lose your diplomatic rights, you lose your diplomatic rights in Mexico if you're a dual citizen, not in any other country. If you're in Europe and you're using as a matter of fact, I'll give you an example. Let's say we want to travel to Europe from Mexico and we're both dual citizens. We don't want to use our Mexican passport. We exit, uh, we exit as Mexicans, of course, but we get to Europe and it's easier to come in on our U.S. passport. We go in on our U.S. passport. Then we have diplomatic protection from the United States, not from, for we derive it from the United States. In other words, my diplomatic protection doesn't go away in Europe because we entered on a U.S. passport. Now, when I come back, and now I'm talking a naturalized citizen, if I come in and present my U.S. passport, I automatically lose my citizenship because I did a legal process. Oh, well, I don't know how automatic it is, but I would lose my citizenship because I came in as an American and not as a Mexican. Mexico sees you as a Mexican when you're here. The reason why you lose your diplomatic privileges is because what happens is, let's say you get arrested and you call the consulate. I want my U.S. consulate privileges. You call the U.S. consulate, or they call the U.S. consulate because, or but you're a Mexican citizen. We don't have to report Mexican citizens to the U.S. consulate. The reason why we don't is because we don't recognize you being an American. We only recognize you as being Mexican. If that makes any sense, that's why I talk about losing your diplomatic privileges. And diplomatic privileges aren't privileges in a sense, because if you got arrested, the only thing the consulate can really do for you is make sure that you're being treated well, make sure that you're getting fed, make sure that the conditions that you're being held in are, they can't get you out of jail. Now, I do know if it was a political, I don't know, if you were a professional basketball player and you were going to Russia and you got caught with a little bit of marijuana and stuck in jail, maybe the U.S. government's going to come and try to help you out. But other than that, if you're just a normal citizen, the only thing you really get off of diplomatic privileges is the fact that you have a consulate, or you can call a U.S. embassy and say help. Um, and even if you ran to a U.S. embassy right now, let's say Mexico is chasing you, and you ran to the U.S. embassy, and I'm a U.S. citizen, and you run into the U.S. embassy. They can't chase you into the U.S. embassy, but the thing that can happen is they can say, this guy's a Mexican citizen, give him back. And it's all up to the consulate, but the consulate could say, okay, well, he's a Mexican citizen, so we have to give him back. So, uh, Tom, didn't know you could get a Mexican passport in the U.S. at the consulate. Yes, at the consulate. That's if you're a Mexican citizen. Um, at the consulate, the Mexican consulate, even in the U.S. consulate, the consulates here, the U.S. consulate and the U.S. embassy, they're here for services for Americans that live here. Okay. The same happens for Mexican consulates. Like when I would arrest a person that's a Mexican citizen, I would have to advise, unless they were dual citizens, I would have to advise the Mexican consulate. And the consulate officer even had the right, he would even show up to our office sometimes and interview the person that I arrested or detained, because they have rights to talk to a consulate officer. But not only do the consulates process services for Mexican citizens, they also process them for the U.S. citizens that are asking for a visa. That's what we're most commonly, that's the familiarity we have with consulates. Consulates, we always know they're the ones we go to for the visa. They're the ones we have to meet economic solvency. But there's another side to the consulate that's what I was just explaining, Mexican citizenship services. So if you're a Mexican citizen in the United States and you need some type of service, such as your passport, you need an ID identifying you as a Mexican citizen. Uh, Prior to 1997, people that naturalized lost their Mexican citizenship. Then they passed a law in 1997. So anybody that lost their citizenship has to go back to a Mexican consulate and gain their citizenship. And they can actually they actually make your copy of your passport. We have friends that have gone to the Mexican consulate, walk out with their Mexican passport the same day. Actually, one of our friends had to claim her citizenship back because she was in that period of time when if you naturalized, you lost it, and then she wanted to claim it back later on. Of course, just recently actually, and she claimed it back, but she had to go through the whole process of saying prove that she was born in Mexico and all of that stuff. Uh, hey, Wilfredo, how's it going? Wouldn't they still be entitled to diplomatic protection from your U.S. passport? Yeah, Michael. The thing is, if I'm understanding your question correctly, that's what I was explaining. When you're in Mexico, you're considered a Mexican citizen only. So even though you have a second passport, because before 1997, people that had a Mexican citizenship, the minute they naturalized, they lost their citizenship. Okay. So you were kind of an American. They didn't recognize dual citizenship. Then what Mexico did after 1997 is they said, you can be a dual citizen, but everything you do here in Mexico, you have to do as a Mexican citizen. Actually, even I taught, this is very common practice on the border. Um, um, there's this is a common practice on the border. People that are Mexican citizens, they'll go and get a tip as a U.S. citizen. They'll use their U.S. passport and get a visitor's permit, and then get a 6-month tip or a 180-day tip, and not. But see, here's the thing, and it's very common practice. But here's the thing: if you're a naturalized citizen, you can lose your citizenship over it because you're actually doing an official Mexican act, legal something legal. The Mexican government, you're filling out official Mexican government papers as a U.S. citizen, not as a Mexican citizen. So basically, the way it works is you can get fined. If you're a Mexican citizen by birth, you get fined. If you're by naturalization, you can lose your citizenship. Now, does SAT check? No, not really. Half the time, like I said, it's a very common practice. I know a lot of people that do it. They have both Mexicans and they go and they get a tip. And give me a 6 months FMM. Okay, I'm going to get a tip for 6 months. Okay, and nobody asked them for their Mexican passport. Nobody checks. So, but that's the technicality. You can actually get in trouble even doing that. So that's why you don't get the U.S. diplomatic protection. Now, if the U.S. government wants to intervene because you're a U.S. citizen, like I said, you're a professional sports player or something like that, and I don't know, the president or whatever thinks that you unjustly got detained, then maybe, yeah, they'll put political pressure on the government of Mexico to give you back, or we're going to do everything we can to get you back. But that's in the case of very high profile people. But on the normal, there's two sides of the coin. On one hand, there's immigration crisis. However, it's not only U.S. Moreover, the situation is bigger worldwide, especially in Western Europe, I think. The immigration system. Yeah, a lot of immigration. Actually, the immigration system in the United States is broken too. Uh, I think the immigration system, everywhere you go, it's broken. On the other side of the coin, the crisis isn't as bad as people make out to be. Yes, a lot of them came to Mexico and from there go to the United States. However, not everyone manages to get in. Yeah, and also, Michael, you know what I'm noticing? Because I live in Monterrey. One of the things that I noticed, there's a lot of people that are staying here. They came like with the intention of going to, and they got a humanitarian visa here to stay here to go to the United States. And a lot of people end up staying here. As a matter of fact, give you a perfect example. I'm helping one of our friends that's moving here in the same vicinity. They're from Querétaro, but they're building another house here in San Miguel, and they live in my neighborhood or close to me. And they're trying to get Telmex installed. And we started talking to the Telmex installer, and he happens to be from Venezuela. A lot of people are staying here in Mexico, not even trying to make it to the United States, to be honest with you. Some of them are staying here. I was in line when I did my permanent residency, when I was going to get my sign my card and get my card. Uh, there was a lady, the whole line was made up of a bunch of Cubans that were getting their residency because they weren't going to. The one was a nurse. There was another guy that was a doctor that was going to stay in Mexico. They didn't even have a desire to go into the United States. Actually, I think the primary goal was to go to the United States, and they were like, "No, we're going to stay here. I got a job here. I got a job at the hospital. The nurse got a job at the hospital. She was waiting for and the doctor was waiting for some paperwork so that he could start practicing medicine." And there's a lot of people that are actually staying here, and we're seeing a lot of Haitians, all of that stuff, working at the car wash, not run of the mill people, just hanging out there in Monterrey. We're seeing a lot of the immigration, of people coming from South America, from Haiti, from some of the other countries, from China, even staying here in Mexico. Actually, maybe they didn't make it across. I don't know, but we're seeing it more of a population. I appreciate it when AMLO suggests the U.S. government invest in or send funds to the Central South American country where poverty persists. Yeah, and one of the things uh, uh, that one of the things that I think the United States has had a hard time understanding is is they think that they can step all over Mexico. And one of the things that's not happening now is Mexico starting to talk back. Um, and that's just what's going on. I don't keep up with politics that much, to be honest with you. I'm so happy just being here in San Miguel and having fun. Oh, wow, Nature Lover, your passport wasn't stamped? Hopefully, yeah, hopefully check with a facilitator. Uh, and actually, maybe they might be able to pull you up in the system. Victoria, if I were in Mexico between 2015, between question mark to 2022 or 2000, can I return this year on a visitor's visa, stay the length of the visitor's visa, and apply for temporary residency with? Yes, you can, Victoria. Make, as long as you have proof that you entered. Um, here's the catch. Um, now that some airports give 180 days, then you have to stay here the 180 days. If the program goes away for whatever reason, then you have an issue. You have to stay the length of the FMM, and it has to expire. Um, there are some facilitators that suggest, oh, we have ways that you can ask for a 7-day FMM. Um, I don't know how that works. Maybe it's through a certain airport. Land borders, I think you can ask for. I think the 7-day FMM is free, and then anything after 7 days you have to pay for. So you can ask for the free one and come in on 7 days. But also, you got to check with the regulations of the office you're going to do it in, because some require that it be an expired 180-day FMM. Some of them are required that you actually entered in 2023 and expiring this year. So you need to check. But depending on all the immigration offices, the thing about this is they're all different. Not all of them are different. Some of them are the same, but they all set different policies. So what you want to do, like I said, get a hold of a good immigration facilitator. I know Sonia Diaz, Ivan Pavans in Querétaro. Sonia Diaz is here. Sonia Diaz has a satellite office in Nayarit. I forgot her name. Jesus. And the last time they gave me her name in the last live stream, they have satellite offices in Nayarit and also Puerto Vallarta. So you might want to reach out to them. If you have the FMM or you have the proof of the passport stamp, just find out what they need. I know San Miguel is a little bit lenient on and I think Merida is also a little bit lenient. For a little while, San Miguel didn't like people with multiple injuries, but according to what Sonia's been putting out lately, there all you need is an expired FMM. So the only risk you run, Victoria, I'll put it up again. The only risk that you really run is if they give you 180 days and you decide to stay here for 180 days and work remotely or whatever, and then all of a sudden it expires, and then when it expires, the program no longer exists. The thing is, that program was supposed to go away in 2022. It hasn't gone away. My personal feeling is that immigration has a different political stance on people that are coming here. So instead of for people that are coming here, immigration has a different stance than exterior relations, because this happens in any government. And they're saying, oh, well, we'll let people become regular that have been here illegally, and it will also give people another option if they can't meet the financial requirements and they really want to come in. And then they're saying that's a way of getting around SRE. Um, but you don't know when politics are going to change. We have a president that's going to change. Uh, what if the new president says um, all my uh, all the previous presidents, whatchamacallit, policies, no more, shut down all the regularization programs? I don't know. It could happen. I'm not saying it is going to happen. We're just in a kind of a funky year right now because we don't know what the new policies are going to be. Lisa, still cannot locate my father's birth certificate. Oh, wow. And you've tried everything, Lisa. I know you've gone through a lot. I see it makes sense. I don't know what else to tell you, Lisa. And I think you had a problem. Uh, you had a problem with it was a little town that your father was born in or something, and they didn't keep very good records. And I don't know, maybe a Mexican attorney might be able to help you out with that in that area. I don't know. Uh, I know my wife's in the national registry, so she actually pulls it up with her court number and everything else. So, Tom, estoy seguro que tú puedes pasar el examen en español. No te preocupes. Yeah. Well, you know what, Tom? It's been a long time since I've taken any kind of test, any kind of test. So uh, I always say, just in case I don't pass it. So if I come back and I say I didn't pass it, I at least told you guys in case I don't pass it. I probably can. I don't think I'm going to have a problem with it, but I've been reading. I've been reading Spanish actually. Uh, I have been reading Spanish, and also I need to start practice writing it because I speak it, but not as much read. I can comprehend it when I read it, but I'm very slow. That makes sense. On your booking from Mexico to Europe, you'd essentially have to book your boarding and booking information with your U.S. passport, but then leave Mexico or checking out with a Mexican. Yeah, and actually, I don't think I have to check out as a resident. Mexican citizens don't have to check out; they just have to check it on the other side. It's the same as the U.S. where they don't have a border control. I have to do it because when you're a resident, if you're going to apply for, you can be out of the country more than 180 days. They keep it for statistics purposes. Um, that's why I tell permanent residents, you're not going to lose it if you didn't check out. You're just going to have a bunch of hassle at the airport when you check back in and you didn't check out. Um, and as a matter of fact, I got a, oh, okay. I got to check out in Monterrey. So I don't even know where the INM office is there. So I got to figure that out. Okay, JB Birch, I'm uh, 71, all have passed, including my father, but I do have cousins in Mexico that have their, I have never met. My grandmother, aunts, and uncles left Mexico in 1917. Dad was born in 1917 in USA. Oh, darn it. Yeah, your grandma had a big family. JD, the problem that you're going to have is because your father didn't, unless your father fixed it. Um, there may be there's a guy by the name of McMullen. You might want to talk with him. He's out of Guadalajara, and he also services Spencer McMullen. Look up his law firm. He's an American, but he studied law in Mexico, and he might be able to do something for you. But usually, when the father doesn't take care of it, then you have to get it through being a descendant. The only difference is you would have to take the test. Now, you're 71, you would have to take the Spanish test. You wouldn't have to take the cultural test. But if I'm not mistaken, unless there's some way they can fix your father actually being deceased into a Mexican citizen, you can't derive it unless you have paperwork from your father, if that makes sense. Um, I don't know if there's anything in Mexico that could be done legally, or after the fact they can make him a Mexican citizen, or he claims his citizenship, and then you could get it through that. Yeah, Michael, this is why no matter what, you check into the INM office at the airport. Yes, in Puerto Vallarta Airlines take care of it, but I can check. I check with the INM office before going. And actually, Tom, I saw something about Puerto Vallarta changing, that they actually have an INM. I don't know if that was Puerto Vallarta or Cancun or Playa or Cancun Airport, but now, if I'm not mistaken, they even have an INM booth at the very end of the ticket counters. Um, so I think that was Puerto Vallarta. Yes, you're permanente. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to have to check out just like you, but I got to find the INM office in the Monterrey airport, the international airport. And actually, there not a lot of people leave, residents leave out of Monterrey. It's very common out of Puerto Vallarta, it's common out of Querétaro, it's common out of Leon, which is close to here. It's common out of Mexico City, but it's not common out of Monterrey. So I don't even know when I get there what they're going to do or say, because I don't know. I might be the first one that they've checked out. Luckily, I'm a citizen by birth because I attained at 17, almost a year away from passing as a natural born. Yeah. I guess your father passed or parents passed away after that. Um, I'm resident permanente. Yep. Wilfredo, you live close by, I think, if I'm not mistaken. That is correct. Many who fail to getting in the U.S. usually intend to live in Mexico. My question is there an intention of obtaining Mexican citizenship as Mexico is part of? Um, I have no idea, Michael, but I do know that a lot of them are staying here, which facilitates Mexican professionals. I don't know, to be honest with you. Um, what I've seen a lot, Michael, with talking to a couple of these people, um, talking to a couple of people, what I've seen a lot of, especially like even talking to this nurse and this doctor, they kind of like even said they don't want to go to the United States. They are actually happy here in the United States. Um, and you might want to not they're happy to be here tonight. They might want to just not you. They might you already have Mexican citizenship, but they might want to just stay here in Mexico. I think they're seeing the advantages of living in Mexico, and some of them are just like even the Cubans. Like I said, the Cubans once they make it in the United States is kind of a weird deal because Cuba. Well, I know that there was some deals where Cuba would take some Cubans back, but when you get into the United States, you're kind of in a weird situation because you're illegally there, but you're legally there because you can't be returned to your country. And I think that kind of changed in one of the last administrations, but um, and so they were kind of given work permission to work. A lot of them were professionals. A lot of them would get jobs as doctors or whatever and just stay there. Um, and eventually get legal status over the years of being a professional or have a hospital sponsor them or whatever that might be. But now, I don't think it's with the idea of becoming a Mexican citizen to get into the United States. I think just a lot of people are staying here, to be honest with you, just because they think it's a better life here. Um, and I know the Cuban lady we were talking to that's a nurse. She said, I mean, you got to remember in Cuba, she was talking to us an onion. They would get an onion, one onion for the month, literally. And she said, I'm in heaven here. I can go to the mercado and buy as many onions as I want. I can buy meat. I can buy all of these things. And, you know, why do I always want to go to the hassle of trying to get in the United States when I have a job here? I'm doing what I love. I can afford to live here. And uh, let me put it this way, even if I live in what other people would consider poverty, uh, you don't understand. I lived in real poverty. Like literally, we would go starving because we'd have to part the onion amongst 6 or 7 in our family for a whole month. So I think that's what's happening now a lot. Jesse Fraley, do we need parents' both certificates when applying for the standard temp or permanent retirement visas? No, you don't. Permanent visa. It's either temporary or permanent. The retirement is one of the prerequisites for permanent. Jesse, you don't need your parents' birth certificate. All you need is your passport, and then of course all the documentation. Um, and all of that documentation is your proofs of financial solvency, all of that stuff. You need to take that to the but you don't need your parents' birth certificates. It's just your passport, so they can put a visa in there, the Conhib visa in there, and then you have to meet the financial requirements. If you don't meet up for permanent residency, you have to meet financial requirements, and you have to be a retirement age, or you have to show that you're retired through a pension letter. Uh, and the actual financial solvency requirements are higher for permanent residency than they are for temporary. So some people have to actually apply for temporary first, and then you get one temporary for a year, and then after a year you renew it for 3 years, and after 4 years you convert it to permanent. Makes sense, Ernie, Michael. Okay, well, it looks like I made an hour and a half, and so I think starve the people, control the people. Yep, that's the way it works in Cuba, actually. Unfortunately, so they have a lot better life here in Mexico, and even as on a humanitarian living here on maybe what we consider a lower wage. Trust me, they consider it a they're rich to them because they didn't have all of those privileges back in their country. I'm going to leave it at that. It's an hour and 30 minutes. Thank you guys for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'm trying to get that video together. The one thing that I'm trying to get together about what happened to the couple is I really want to get the point across of what can happen to you if you don't follow the rules, and stuff as simple as not carrying your documents, all of that stuff. These people didn't have a tip. And I'm trying to do this video as politically correct as possible because I don't want anybody to put these people down. I've already asked for your help. And I've already said, please visit their website, please give to their, because they were just the victims of misinformation. And they were the perfect example of someone telling them, you don't need a tip. You're coming to Cancun, or they read somewhere. You don't need a tip if you're in Cancun. But nobody told them that they needed a tip. And then someone else told them, go the other way. Don't worry. All the customs will do is turn you back, or they'll let you go. Keep going. Or no one told them that when they went to Baja for a little while, they were illegal. They were supposed to have a tip. And so that's my point in making sure you research. But at the same time, I don't want to make it look like I'm putting these people down. I'm not putting them down. And they've been gracious enough to say, thank you for using us as an example of what can happen to you in Mexico. But I'm trying to keep the clips and trying to put stuff together, the script together. So I'm not too critical, but at the same time, we can help these people out. And hopefully I'll get that video out this week. Next week, I'm going to be pretty quiet because I'm going to be going back to Monterrey. Um, I have another video planned, but I'm not going to edit that one until I get back to Monterrey. I have a lot of stuff that I need to do here, so hopefully I can get this out. I want to get the band video out while it's still fresh. They did do an update video. If you want to go visit their channel, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe, support them, view their video. I mean, even 5 cents they get for monetization can help them. For a view, or 2 cents that they get for a view. I mean, anything that can help them. These people ended up they lost everything. I mean, literally everything. They were lucky to get home, and and thank God they got home. They have an update on trying to get their van back. That they want them to go back to Mexico. I don't know what they're going to do. They haven't decided yet. But please, like I said, I apologize for hitting the mic there. Please, like I said, um, help them out and go over there and support them. Even $5. I mean, if you can afford $5, give $5 and to their GoFundMe. They're going to need, even if they have to go to Mexico to get their van back, it's going to be a humongous fine. Heaven even knows if they're going to even be able to have them come up with the money. And you know, they didn't have a plan B, and they got stuck. They were an example of how you can lose everything. And this goes for everything. This goes for not carrying your documents with you if you're traveling. This goes for, like I said, you could end up in a detention center. This goes for running to the border every 180 days and just assuming that you're going to get it. And then all of a sudden you don't get it. What's going to be your plan B? I mean, and especially a lot of those people that are running to the border run to police. Well, how are you going to get back how are you going to get back? If you not let in at the Mexican border, or some people run down to Guatemala. What happens if they don't let you back in Guatemala? Now I'm stuck in Guatemala. What do I do? How do I get home? How do I get, You don't want to end up in these people's situation. You always want to have a plan. I'm not encouraging doing border runs. Like I said, if you've been living here and you've been running to the border every 180 days, you can save yourself a lot of money by just going through the regularization program. There's no reason why you shouldn't. And I understand there's a lot of people here on a fixed income, and $1,000 to fix your stuff, or $1,500 or $2,000 to fix your paperwork is a lot of money, but it's well worth it. It's more worth losing your livelihood and not being able to get back, or even getting sent back and having to go back to a place you can't afford. Um, so think about it, please. I mean, it's better to follow the rules than not follow them and pay the consequences. We all have to make decisions in life. Sometimes we have to make a decision not to follow the rules because it might be life or death. But we have to know the consequences of not following the rules. Uh, and these people even stated in their video, we had to risk losing our van and going through a safer route, or we had to, which they risked losing their van the whole time, but or we had to go through this old route, which they would have risked losing their van anyway. But in their minds, breaking these rules were more important. Our safety is more important than breaking these rules, and our safety is more important. The problem is they didn't know the consequences. They didn't know that they were going to lose their van. They didn't know they were going to get stuck in the middle of nowhere. They got stopped in the middle of nowhere. They literally had to tag a ride with a bus. The immigration guys helped them get on the bus. Then they ended up in a town they didn't even know. Then they ended up driving down to Guatemala. Then they sent them back. And then the rental car people, it was a mess. Anything that could go wrong. And then they got on the plane in Mexico City. They got into Mexico City. They got stopped by the cops because they weren't even supposed to be on the road at the time because their plate didn't have an odd number. Uh, Anything that could Murphy's law was in full effect with these people, and and trust me, Murphy's law can be in full effect with anybody, including me. I mean, I've had many situations in my life where Murphy's law just wasn't on my side, was on my side, because anything that could go wrong did go wrong. So you just don't ever want to be in that position, and you always want to have a backup plan, if you ever know. And that's my goal in this channel, is to make sure that you guys are informed, that you know the rules, and if you're gonna break the rules for whatever reason, that they're not lenient or they're lenient, don't worry about it. Or you listen to somebody that says we do it all the time, just know the consequences and be ready. Um, and like I said, I know people that run to the border 180 days, they take all their belongings with them just in case they don't get let back in. I know people that actually do that. Um, and they say, if I don't get let back in, I'll just, they go to the United States, of course, and they live in the United States. I'll just go back home with my kids or whatever. So, okay. I mean, that's your choice. You know the consequences. That's what's important. And you have a plan B. Um, Thank you for joining me. I love you guys. I have a great community here. Even the worst comments that I thought I was going to have to delete by putting this up there, I did have a lot of arguing on Facebook of, yeah, everybody should get their papers and everything. The purpose of this video was to tell people, look, this is just a disinformation campaign. This is the truth. It's TikTok videos. Don't rely on social media. Even in Facebook, you have to take everything for face value, and that's the reason why I did this video. But I have a great community. Everybody's been respectful. Even the comments that I've gotten, I haven't had to. I think I had to delete one comment. It was actually held by YouTube anyway, and it was a hateful comment from in Spanish. Uh, basically everybody, all the Americans should go home. So I don't accept those kinds of comments, or I don't accept people wanting to argue for the sake of arguing. Uh, but like I said, I have a great community. Everybody's been respectful. If you want to visit my store, go ahead. I don't make any money off of it. Like I said, I'm trying to give it to you at cost. The only reason why I put up a store is so that you guys, at your request, actually, how do I get merchandise with your logo on it? Because I guess a lot of people, and I've been asked that since since I put the logo up. Many people have asked, and actually, I started by doing giveaways, but my audience has gotten so big that I don't do the giveaways anymore. And I had already sourced a lot of the stuff already through local people, but I'm already out of merchandise that I sourced locally and I paid for myself. So if you want to go look at the store, go ahead. I'm going to put out a video announcing the store, the purpose of the store. Uh, like I said, I don't make any money off of it. But if you want merchandise with my logo on it, go for it. And and I'm very amazed because pretty much I don't know how these YouTubers do it because pretty much the ad cost is, well, I don't know, it's probably cheaper than what other YouTubers are selling their T-shirts for because they want you to mark it up to like $10. And I was like, no, I'm going to mark it up $1 or $2. I think $2 is the most I would go, or $2 and whatever cents. I put like $24.99 and it was like a $1.93 or whatever. But I didn't try not to mark it up anything, and I'm not going to make any money off. Trust me, I don't make any money off of YouTube. I actually got accused on one of the ahihiks that all I wanted to do with this video was to get views so I can make a lot of money, and I don't make any money off of this. And thank you very much. And the beautiful thing about not making any money is that I can be the way I am. I can be me. I can stress the rules. I can tell you the truth, and I don't have anything that motivates me other than telling you guys the truth uh, and having fun and having an awesome, or let me say badass community. Excuse my cussing. I don't do that very much online, but I have an awesome community. So thank you. And Lisa, I hope you get, uh, you can get a hold of your dad's birth certificate. I don't know how else. Actually, Lisa, I gave the name of Spencer McMullen. See if he can do anything for you. He's the reason why I recommend Spencer is because Spencer is actually he's actually an expat. That I mean, he speaks very good English. He speaks very good Spanish too. I mean, he studied law. I don't know his whole story, but I know that he does a lot of services, especially in the Ajijic area. I think he's got an office in Ajijic, and he handles special kind of like special hard cases like this. Uh, I don't know how much he charges. I just know that everybody rants and raves about how great he is. So you might want to talk to Spencer. I don't know if I've sent you that way. Um, and in the next live, maybe I'll put a link to Spencer's law firm. I gotta find it. uh, uh, I gotta shuffle, but if you look up Spencer McMullen Law Firm, Mexico, I think he should come up. It's either in Guadalajara or in Ajijic. So maybe he can help you out, Lisa. Thank you very much, and I'm going. I promise. Uh, until next time, stay safe and stay informed.